Fishing. This is going to be my summary of the spring portion of 2015 Swimbait Fishing the Northeast. Guys, I had a truly amazing spring. I caught the biggest fish of my life. I caught my personal best by a large margin too. And I caught more big fish in a 6-week period than I've ever caught in my entire life. So right there, you know, off to a great start. Alright guys, so yeah, this is going to be a summary of the spring portion. What can you expect in this video? Guys, I'm going to show you some footage of those nice fish that I caught. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my philosophy. You know, fishing's dynamic and everybody has their own philosophy regardless of technique. I have, I guess, a little bit of a different take on my swimbait philosophy in that I'm not throwing just swim baits, and I know that might sound kind of crazy in a video entitled Swimbait Fishing the Northeast, but basically it's more of a big lure philosophy, swim bait or otherwise. I just want to keep presenting large lures regardless of what kind of lure it is. Right, so I'm going to show you some examples of the other things that I've been throwing with success, larger lures, and getting some nice bites. Here also, I should mention, guys, this is for those of you who are new to this. If you're just starting out in swimbait fishing, or if you haven't even started, maybe you want to add that swimbait rig just as one of your other rigs. You just want to have it on deck, or maybe you want to go all in, but you haven't done it yet. So that's one of the things I'm going to touch on in this video, guys, is the starting out component. And please understand, for you guys who've been doing it a long time, I don't claim to be an expert. This is all about getting started in it and those early observations from somebody who is very interested in catching those trophy fish and has really just dedicated himself to it and is trying to learn and share what I can along the way. Alright guys, so in this video what I'd like to do is focus on some of the hardware. I'm going to show you the rods that I'm using and why I chose them, the reels of course, and the line that I have decided to use. Everybody's going to have their own philosophy with regard to line and lures and techniques, but I'm just showing you what I've chosen and why I've chosen it as someone who's starting out. In subsequent videos, guys, we're going to take a closer look. Got the wind kicking up here, sorry. We're going to take a closer look at the lures, right? Not in this one, but we'll do that maybe at the summary of the summer season. And that's pretty much it, guys. So let me go over to a table here and give you a close-up of some of the stuff that I'm using. We'll talk a little bit of philosophy, and then we'll roll into some of the great catches I've had this year, and that's pretty much it. Alright everybody, thanks for checking out the video, and welcome. Swimbait Fishing the Northeast. Big bait philosophy. Let me expand upon that for a moment. Although this is Swimbait Fishing the Northeast, everything that I'm going to be using this year, I'm using in a step-up size from the traditional size. Let me give you some examples. So starting with the swim baits, this would be an example, little Kitech 4.8 of a traditional sized swim bait. Now of course we're going to be upping it into mid-sized lures, like the Mattlures. Here's another mid-sized lure, Shimano or Jackall Gantarel. And then the truly large-sized lures, the 8-inch Huddleston Deluxe. So there is upping the lure size with the swim baits. But how do we apply that to other lures? It's really quite simple, and it makes a lot of sense. Why do we get those larger strikes on the Huddlestons, on those MS Slammers, on those big lures? Simply because of the presence in the water. It is a larger meal. There are going to be times where a swimbait is not the right choice based on the cover or the type of water. And so in those instances, I'm going to be throwing the lure that makes sense to throw, but in a much larger size. Let me give you some examples of those. You've got some heavy pads, you've got some heavy grass, you want to throw the frog. It's the right lure for that situation and that terrain. This is a Booyah pad crasher. It's relatively compact. This is a 6-inch Z-Man's Pop Frogs. Similar in length, but a much larger profile in the water. We're fishing a jig, right? Maybe you got some heavy brush. It's a situation whereas we can't effectively bring a swim bait through there. Perhaps you could bring a weedless one through, but you want to fish a jig to really get into the nooks and crannies, into the heart of that brush pile or that dense timber. Here's a 1/2 ounce jig with a Strike King Rage craw on the back of it, very compact. here is a very, very large jig. Now, of course, the body in the jig is really going to come from the trailer. And this one right here is a 4.5 inch or 4.25 inch Big Bite Baits Fightin' Frog. Immediately, we've upped the presence of our jig in the water. You can extend it even to spinnerbaits. Really, in this case, you're almost looking at some musky gear. Here is a traditional size spinnerbait. It's a 3/8 ounce. It's a Mega Strike. And here is something along the lines of what I've been using. This is a Taurus Spin 1.5 ounce spinnerbait. It comes with a 6-inch tube, super huge head, the very big blades, and this is just a very, very different presence in the water. And of course, we can apply this to the top water. Here is a reasonably large lure. It's a jointed jitterbug. It's about 3.5 inches long. Great night lure. A night lure that a lot of people love in the big bait world is the 9-inch MS Slammer. And as you can see, there's just a little bit of a difference. So that's it, guys. The big bait philosophy. Whatever I'm going to be throwing this year, I'm throwing a very large version of to hopefully attract those larger fish. Yes. Yes, it has. I'm going to show you 4 lures, guys. And then after I show you each lure, I'm going to show you that fish being caught. First fish of the year, new personal best on the 8-inch weedless Huddleston Deluxe. Hello, boys. 8-inch Huddleston, weedless. First time fishing it. Good way to start the year right there. 2015 is a dedicated big swim bait fishing year. Next, we had one about 5 pounds even on this little beauty right here, the Mattlures 3-piece slow sinking hardgill.
Oh yeah, baby. Keep him, come on.
There we go.
Woo!
Another one on the Mattlures.
Get his ass in the boat.
Come on, baby.
All right.
Not bad. Not bad. Folks at home, folks at home. East Coast swimbait fishing is in full effect. 2 days in, 2 nice fish. Mattlures slow sink hardgill. That's in that jacked up color. What we got? Five and 3/8. Another 5-pound fish. Alright guys, that's it. Gonna let her go. Just cracked 5. Got the the high accuracy scale this year. 5 and 3/8. Wonderful. As spring started to roll into summer, the swimbait bite admittedly was starting to slow down for me, and I moved to the frog and some of the shallows, the pads, as those start to come in. Right here you're going to see a nice 5-pound fish coming on the Mann's Goliath frog. Fish on. He just slipped it off. Hard to tell. Oh, it's a good fish. It's a real good fish. Alright. Here we go, guys. Another nice fish. Delicate strike too. Delicate strike, just slurped it off the surface. See inside there? It's on that Mann's, what is this guy called? Colossal? No. Goliath, the Mann's Goliath frog. Get a weight on this guy. Get this thing in there. Five, 1 and 1/8. Pretty nice. On the Goliath frog. What a cool lure, guys. These photorealistic finishes are amazing. You're going to see 2 fish right here. One is an honorable mention. It's not quite 5, but it's a real nice high 4-pound fish. You're also going to see a 5-pound, 5-ounce fish coming on this guy, the Jackall Gantarel. There he is. Another solid fish. Here we go, guys. Making a day of it. Just seeing how many baits we can get a fish on here. Nothing giant, not like the other day cracking 6, but this one here looks like he'll go maybe 4.5. And damn, that camera just died again. That camera likes to die at inopportune times. So there we go, guys. Another real solid fish. Let's get a weight on this one. That's on that new, it's on the Gantarel. Just shy of 411, 410 and 7/8. I've never caught a damn wind. Never caught a real big fish out of here. I think I got a 3, maybe like a 3.5 once. But this place is just nobody fishes it, and it puts out the numbers. Oh, there is a fish. Oh, we hit it light the first time. That's a better fish. Oh, 3 was my best until now. 3 was my best until now. Hey, there's the one we're looking for. Hey, there's the one. Gantarel going to work. Look at how we got that, guys. Look at that. Let's get this guy. My best up until now was about 3 and change, maybe 3.3, and nobody fishes this place. And I was saying I do numbers here in the evening when that bike turned on. I'll pull numbers of fish, but always 1s and 2s and A3. I said there's no way there's not better fish in here. That's a nice looking fish. Definitely gotta wait on this guy. Alright guys, here we go. 5.5 flat. Gantarel and a monster. Alright guys, back in action here. That was crazy. Just talking about I never caught one, but I think they're in here, and as I'm saying it, bam! You can't go wrong with that, I tell you what. That's 3 fish on the Gantarel so far, total this year, only 3 fish. And as of now, a 5.5, a 4.10, and there was a 3 something, like a 3.4. Guys, I can't be this lucky. Oh, I just had a hit. I went years without catching a 5. And I've got a 6.5 and 2 5s in my first 3 weeks of fishing, all on swim baits. So either I need to start playing the lottery, or you need to start throwing some big baits. I'm not a pitch man, just excited. I guess I'm coming into the realization what a lot of other people have known for a long time. Stands to reason, right? Not too many people would argue bigger fish catch, or bigger lures catch bigger fish, but once it starts happening to you, and it starts happening quickly, I tell you, I'm on the forums and I hear guys say, you know, how they get hooked on swimbait fishing. And I'm like, yeah, but still you're going to have those droughts, and that's what I thought all the other years. You're going to have those droughts, and is it worth it? Yes. If you're someone in the Northeast and you don't know what a 5-pound fish looks like, you fished a long time and maybe you caught one years ago, or, you know, if you don't want it to be a chance encounter, if you want to hedge your bets considerably, start throwing some big lures, man. I can't imagine that I'm just this lucky to move these kind of numbers just in my first couple weeks. There's no way. There's no way. And this is a mid-sized lure too. I see why these guys commit to like a depths 250 and some of the really dedicated big lures. I guess that's once you get past 5-pound fish. Once that becomes so-so and you want to move into those 7 and 8 and 9-pound fish. That's still a stretch for me here on the East Coast. I'm thinking, ugh, that's a rare catch, but I don't know. We're gonna have to see how this stuff goes here, man. So far, we're doing all right. Guys, let's talk about swimbait fishing as it pertains to what this video is about, which is the springtime. The main thing that I noticed is really that things aren't different than what I was doing springtime with traditional fishing, and that should make sense. What the hallmark of springtime fishing is the spawn. Okay, all fish are driven towards the shallows to to mate and to reproduce, and that makes it a very a very nice time of year for you as a swimbait fisherman. Reason being is because male smallmouth are typically a lot smaller than the females. If you catch a big fish, almost always it's going to be a female. Your males are your fish up to about 3 to 4 pounds. It depends where you are in the country, but I mean, a male at 5 or 6 pounds is almost unheard of. Your big fish are going to be females, and the males may always be shallow throughout other times of the year, but the females, those fish that other times of the year we swear they're not in the lake and we just can't find any big fish, they can't fight the urge, right? They're going to reproduce and they're going to show themselves in the spring. They're going to come up into those shallows. And that's a great thing, because as a swimbait fisherman, you're throwing those bigger baits, which as a percentage of their body size is not a big bait. It's a big bait to you. It's a big bait to those 1 and 2 and maybe even those 3 pounders, but to the fish you're looking for those 5 and 6 and 7 and even larger fish, again as a Northeast angler, that size bait, that 8-inch bait is proportional. If you look at this 8-inch bait and the 6.5, almost 6.5 pound fish that I caught, it really put it in perspective to me. I've seen the videos online, but when I saw the size of that 8-inch Huddleston in that fish's mouth, it wasn't some huge meal. It wasn't something that it ate that and it's not going to eat again for weeks. It was proportional. So that's the really, really cool thing, guys. And what I would strongly recommend is, if you want to get into the swimbait fishing, make it a point, make it your business to be on the water at, coming out of winter and going into the spring. I caught my biggest fish in the 2nd week of April. No, I'm sorry, I think it was the 3rd week, April 16th, and it was only not 2 weeks before the place I got it still had ice on it. And those first couple weeks, up until the 3rd week of May, was just a great period of time. I was catching good numbers of fish or a high quality fish just about every other time that I went out. In total, I got 5 fish over 5 pounds, one of them at 6 pounds 6 ounces. These are incredible numbers for the Northeast, and I did it all within a 6-week period. Now, of course, mileage is going to vary. I'm not guaranteeing that you go out and throw big baits and you're going to get those numbers, but I don't think it was also exceptional. Next year, if I were to do the same thing, I'm not saying I'm going to have the same exact results, but I'm going to feel very confident in the spring. So that's basically it, guys. The spawn is going to dictate those bigger fish come up. That's a good match for you as someone throwing the big baits, having those big females present. And the best part is you don't need electronics. You don't need to find cover or structure or submerged points or scan the lake. You do what you did when you were a kid starting out. You work that bank. Right? You're working that kind of shoreline, that 0 to maybe about 10 feet of water, give or take, depends on the lake and exactly how deep yours is. But 0 to 10 is a good starting point. And you're slowing down. Just fish nice and slow while that water temp is cool. The fish are moving a little bit slower. Make it nice and slow, easy for them to find. That's what I was doing. And that's the advice that I think most people would give you. And there they were. I was getting them on more subtle baits like the Huddleston. I got a couple on the jointed baits like the Gantarel and the Mattlures, and yeah, just pretty much everything seemed to be working in those first 6 weeks of spring. Now, the next video comes summertime, after about the 3rd or 4th week of May. I don't even want to talk about it. Fishing on the Gantarel comes through. Oh! But I will. I'm going to make that second video. I'm actually shooting this in the summertime, and so the struggle goes on. But yeah, guys, springtime is the time that you want to be out. Let me just really emphasize that. Get out there when that water's melting. Get on the water and work those shallows and work them hard. And hopefully you can get yourself a real high quality fish early in the year And that's going to be, you know, for me and for anybody, getting that first fish early in the year does a lot to give you the momentum to carry you on for the next couple months, and you know, kind of persist through the slower, typically slower summer months. All right, guys, so that was the springtime and just some general observations. All right, guys, let's take a look at the rods first. I have my 3 Swimbait rods here. I have one for my heavy setups, one for medium setups, and one for the lighter setups. Now, the conundrum that you might face as a new angler to swimbait fishing is, what rod should I get? You may be looking for a jack of all trades kind of rod. You know, when you start out, even the mid-sized lures might look big, and I don't know how many people actually start right in with the 8-inch baits. So you may be tempted to go with something like this, like these little small bluegills, these little 6-inch lures. The thing is, those small baits are not going to perform well on the heavy rod. This is no different than any other kind of fishing. The heavy rod is going to load up and cast the heavy baits well. But similarly, if you try to use the light lures on this guy, it's not going to work so well. And then you have things like keeping treble hooks planted and all that other good stuff. So basically, guys, it's no different than all of our other techniques. There is kind of rods that can do everything pretty well, but if you get into it, right, if you start doing the style of fishing, you find that you like it, give yourself a little while, then I would advise to get yourself dedicated setups for your light action lures or your lighter weight lures, one for your mid-weight lures, and one for your heavy lures. I'm not really big into the brands. There's a lot of companies that offer a lot of great choices. I'll just share with you what I have here. This is an Okuma Guide Select. This one happens to be 7'6". It's a heavy power in a medium fast action. You'll see that in a lot of swimbait rods. You'll see many of them are rated medium fast, medium fast in terms of the action, to give them a little bit more flex to load up with these heavy lures. Second one is also a 7'6". This is an Okuma, the Guide Select series again. This one is a medium heavy power, so it's a step down in terms of power, but it's also a medium fast in terms of the taper, so it has that same bow through the rod to load up well. You can see the things that I'm using here, guys. 8-inch trouts, these are the heavier lures. Mid-sized baits here, okay, and also some things like, for example, the weedless lures. I don't want them to be on a semi-heavy rod to be able to compress that lure effectively, to have some good backbone. And the lighter lures, to have the rod load up, to get some good distance out of them, and also to keep them planted, because a lot of these lures here are treble hooks. I'll use on my Falcon, this is a 7'9" lowrider. It's actually a big cranking stick. It's called the XD Cranker, rated up to 2 ounces. Has a lot of flex, about 2/3 of the way through the blank, but that's really, really good for hoisting them out and keeping these guys planted. So in a nutshell, guys, rods, again, if you find yourself in the technique, get one specific for each type of lure. However, I would recommend, if you want to kind of get a does everything well rod, find that mid rod, and that's going to be a rod that's rated from about 1 to 3 or 1 to 5 ounces. This Guide Select here, this medium heavy, is a good example of that. But like I said, there's a lot of other manufacturers out there as well that offer one in that mid region, and it'll be able to cover all the bases for you until you figure out which style of fishing within swimbait fishing is your preferred preference. The little guys, the big guys, or the mid-sized guys. Let's talk reels. I'll show you my 3 reels here and what's going on, and a little advice. I got a Daiwa Zillion, which is a 100 size spool. I got a Daiwa Tatula HD, which is a traditional sized low profile reel, but it's got the deep spool. And then I got the round reel, which you see a lot of people using if you're going to be looking at, swimbait videos and forums and stuff. You see a lot of people use these. So what's going on here? Do you need this to swimbait fish? No, you don't. Can you totally get away with a small reel? Well, maybe. It really depends on the lures that you're going to be using. You see a lot of people step into those large round reels because they're throwing wide diameter, heavy pound test line. You go into 20, and particularly even 25, and some guys even step it up to 30-pound test. It's going to be a wider line than traditional lines of 10, 12, 15, etc. That's going to dictate that you have a wider spool, and at some point, that wide spool is going to correlate to just a larger reel. But who's doing that? These are going to be people that are throwing the dedicated, really, really big baits, okay? It also has a little bit to do with where you're fishing in the country. Like here in the Northeast, you know, a 5-pound catch is an incredible catch. The idea of running into a double-digit fish is, you know, almost non-existent. But if you're on the West Coast and those guys down south, you might want that bigger reel just because you're going to be tackling and battling those large fish potentially more often. But do you need the large one? Well, you don't really need it. The small reel with the small spool, you can get away with that if you know you're going to be throwing a lot of smaller lures. And if you're starting out in swimbait fishing, guys, and you say you don't want to add any gear, you want to try to work with what you have, maybe just have an extra, you know, 100 or 200 size spool or reel lying around, and you're going to be throwing pretty small lures. You're going to be throwing those 1 and 2 ounce lures. You're going to be using correspondingly light line. Maybe you're going to be using 15 or 17 pound test. You could even bump it up to 20. Or, depending on the lure and the application, maybe using braid. And of course, braid is going to be a much thinner diameter. You can get away with that traditional sized reel. If I had to give you one recommendation though, I think one of the best ways to go, particularly for someone starting out, might be a low profile reel that has a deep spool. This is kind of the best of both worlds. Again, for those of you guys starting out, you don't want to commit to the big reel. You don't know if you're going to go that route. Maybe you do want to throw some larger lures, or you are entertaining the idea of running that 20-pound test or higher. The traditional size reel is going to feel the same in hand as the reels you're normally used to, but that deep spool is going to allow you to run some of that heavier line. Conversely, if you find that you don't want to use all the spool, you can always put backing on. So you do want to go to a thinner braid, or you just don't want to use it all, put some backing on, and then you can put on your line of choice, and you know, it's like you're fishing with a normal reel again. So that's pretty much the reels, guys. Apart from that, there's no real standout feature. A lot of these reels, they have, you know, like this one has 15 pounds of drag. Again, depending on where you are in the country, that may play a role, but I think for most of us, we can horse in anything shy of a lifetime bass on most drags, as long as it's like 8 or 9 pounds or more. And that's pretty much it. Oh, one other thing, gear ratio. And that's really, it's kind of a personal issue. No matter what style of fishing you do, swimbait fishing included, some people like those low gear ratios for deep lures and for horsing fish out. Some people fishing the same applications prefer high gear ratios. They just want to slow down themselves. They don't want a slow reel, they want to slow down themselves. And they like to be able to catch up to those fish that are running towards the boat. So guys, that's really a personal preference. Just to give you my 2 cents, I prefer the high gear ratio reels because I can always slow down. What I don't like, and I've had one instance of it before, is having a slow gear ratio reel and having a great fish rocket towards you. It is a feeling of in your gut that you're going to lose this fish. No matter how fast you reel, that ratio is just not going to allow you to take in that much line. So again, guys, at the end of the day, they will all work. It's all about preference in terms of gear ratio. And that's it, guys. Just in a nutshell, starting out, some thoughts on reels and their application with regard to swim baiting. Let's talk a little bit about line. Line with swimbait fishing, again, is no different than traditional fishing. You have your usual suspects. You have braid, fluorocarbon, copoly, and mono. And the same applies with traditional fishing when you want to use each one. I'll just share with you guys what I'm using and why. I started off the year using fluorocarbon on here, and I had mono on here, but I've actually been experimenting, and right now I'm using braid on everything. And what I do then is I run that braid to a leader, either a mono or a fluorocarbon leader, depending on my application and also water clarity. The reason that I'm doing this, and I'm experimenting, I don't know if I'll do this forever going forward, but what I found is you could really bomb some of these lures real far because they're heavy, they load up well. And a couple times I had gotten strikes all the way at the end of my cast. You know, you're casting well over 100 feet out, and trying to set the hook with mono or even fluorocarbon sometimes when that lure is all the way out there, I didn't feel like I was transferring all the power I wanted to those hooks, and some of those strikes did not equate to hooked fish. So what I'm trying now, guys, is going braid with everything, and then I'm rolling into those leaders. But again, guys, this is really just personal preference. For subsurface lures, the usual applies. A lot of guys are going to use fluorocarbon on things like the depth slide swimmer, Things like these, well, pretty much anything that's going to be subsurface, fluorocarbon is often a preferred choice. It doesn't have as much stretch as the mono. For topwater, usual, we have a wake bait here, and this is a slow sink. Mono is a good choice to keep those lures high on the surface. Mono, of course, is going to have some more stretch, which is often seen as a good thing on some of our treble hook lures. It gives you an added bit of stretch in your system in addition to your rod. And then for these big guys here, I know kind of the king of it all, Butch Brown, he fishes on a 20-pound fluorocarbon. But I was doing that, and I just really prefer the feel that I get when I'm doing bottom contact, if I'm dragging a Hud on the bottom. And just the power that I can send in, particularly, like here's an example of why I like braid. This is an 8-inch weedless Huddleston. So you figure if that lure is really far out there, and it's on the bottom, and it's weedless, right? There's going to be times where that's the combination. You might have a lot of cover down there. That braid with that zero stretch is the thing that I want to be able to compress that weedless lure and set the hook. So guys, there's all sorts of different scenarios and the lures and the types of condition, depth, etc. And ideally we'd be able to just swap spools in and out as we saw fit. But that's what I'm using, guys, and I will report to you at the end of the year to let you know how it all worked out. But currently going to that braid and using leaders appropriate for the situation. And that's my line setup.